Today's video is sponsored by EvolvePCs. I want to thank our partners over at Evolve for always hooking us up with literally the best PCs in the industry. Everything from their build quality to the customer support to the gaming performance, all of it has been top of the line. And today, guys, we're actually really proud to announce that Evolve is offering an exclusive signature Aztecross PC featuring our very own frosted glass logo, custom cables, and our signature etch right into the case. And to top it all off, it's even got an eggplant. Now, it's also fully configurable, so you can build a system that perfectly fits your budget. And speaking of budget, there's never been a better time to buy with Evolve. As for a limited time, you can get $100 off your purchase when you use code Aztecross at checkout. On top of that, guys, you can even finance your purchase if you'd rather buy now and just pay monthly. Each PC also comes with a 2-year warranty and, of course, lifetime customer support. Personally, I've had mine for 2 years now and have not had a single hiccup once. So, guys, if you're interested, down below, we'll actually have a link in the description to our signature PC. I do want to mention that if you don't want my signature PC, there are other ones. Datto's got one. I think MTash has got one. So again, feel free to just check out their store. They've got a lot of different lineups, and code Aztecross for that discount works for all of those. Again, big thanks to Evolve for sponsoring today's video. Fellas, I owe you a God roll. Now, some of you may have no idea what I'm talking about. So to fill you in, last week I said on stream, if Retrofit Escapade out-damaged Grand Overture, I would delete a God roll. We then proceeded to spend several hours testing the two weapons to see which would come out on top and post all of the testing. We made a 10-minute video recapping a few of the major tests that we performed live. Suffice to say, a lot of you walked away from that video with more questions than answers. And some of you even believed we fudged the numbers so that Grand Overture would come out on top. So today's video will give clarity on the actual damage values of these two weapons. Long story short though, there is a lot of variables at play when comparing these two weapons and pure damage output, but I will be deleting a God roll of your choice live on stream this week before reset on Tuesday and before we go into Grandmaster Nightfalls. All that I ask you is please do not delete one of my God rolls that's going to be necessary for me to get through Grandmasters. Now, I do also want to take today's video to talk about the hype surrounding Retrofit Escapade and also address the heavy weapon meta shift coming in the Lightfall sandbox. Now, before we get into the video, let's take a look at some of the questions from our previous damage testing video. Why did we stop using Divinity during our testing? Great question. Volatile rounds is a debuff that your entire team can interact with. And when you apply Volatile to a target, if another teammate deals damage to that target, releasing the Volatile explosion, they are actually attributed with the Volatile damage. The problem with Divinity is that it also procs that damage. So our Divinity users were sometimes getting over 200,000 total damage on some runs because they were activating the Volatile applied by Retrofit. Now, removing Divinity from the equation allowed for us to deal damage without worrying if the final number on wipe would accurately reflect both of our weapon and Volatile damage. We eventually reverted back to Divinity again to get consistent 4 times the charm procs though. Second question, why not use Legaacy Ambush? Guys, we've said it multiple times. We had an entire video dedicated to new traits and new artifact perks. My conclusion is that none of you watched it, which is fine, but in that video, we talked about Legaacy Ambush being bugged. It provides no benefit to either the Braytex Inheritance origin trait or the Legaacy Ambush origin trait. We've tested this several times. Even for the writing this video, we tested it again. Bungie still has got to fix this artifact mod. Third question, why not try and use Gyrfalcon's finisher damage buff? We actually did try, and we did use this buff for a little bit. For about half an hour, we attempted to proc the Gyrfalcon damage buff before each actual damage phase. And I can safely say that there is little to no point in going for this buff. It requires you to finish a nearby ad, but you also have to perform the finisher while invisible. So either an ad already needs to be at low health, or a teammate has to prime one down for you. You then need to perform a finisher, leaving you only 4 seconds to take advantage of that damage buff. I can see in run and gun situations, especially dealing with champions, where this can be beneficial, and we will have a build utilizing the finisher off of Gyrfalcon. But what I can tell you, currently, for damage phases, it is way too much work to keep an ad around to go for the finish and then proceed to do damage, especially considering most of us with Retrofit are rocking Witherhoard. So you apply the Witherhoard, by the time you get to Retrofit, the buff is already gone. It's unrealistic in boss damage scenarios. Now, the fourth question, backup mag or boss spec? That is actually a good question, and it depends. Depends on the damage phase. For instance, things like Kaido, where your damage phases are broken up into 3, having that 7% increase in your damage is more beneficial than backup mag because of the short damage window. The second thing is that target lock also affects the damage here, which is obviously the perk we're going to be recommending for this LMG. But for the most part, we did prefer to use a spec mod, whether it was against champions or bosses, just for the overall increase in damage. Now, why do we test these weapons? Some of you may be wondering why we even wanted to compare these two weapons in the first place. Retrofit Escapade is the new seasonal LMG, and let me just say, guys, it's become one of the top contenders in the damage meta for multiple reasons. First off, it rolls with target lock, which states that damage increases the longer this weapon remains on target. This actually stacks up to 5 times and reaches a total of 40% damage increase. And if you have the enhanced version of target lock, this is 45%. Now the god roll for this weapon is 4 times a charm, which grants us ammo after landing 4 crit shots. It's also a rapid fire frame machine gun, so it already has deeper ammo reserves. And so the combination here of 4 times the charm, target lock, extended mag, this greatly boosts our magazine perk up, which allows you to just lay on the trigger. As long as you're able to hit your crits, and even if you're missing a few, it's okay. You're giving yourself back ammo, and during this process, the weapon's damage is ramping up with target lock. Now, another huge benefit to this weapon is the origin trait Ambush. This is the weapon's intrinsic trait, where it actually increases weapon range, handling, and damage during the opening moments of an attack. And this is actually a 10% buff. The effect actually lasts for 2 seconds after your initial trigger pull or taking damage, and it takes 5 seconds to re-proc Ambush after leaving combat. So you can see here where like Ambush starts off with that damage buff, and then it ramps into target lock. So one buff is handing off to another buff. Now the final straw that turns Retrofit from meta to absolutely busted is Volatile Rounds. Volatile Rounds is currently bugged on high DPS void weapons, and there's been a lot of confusion here on whether rapid void explosions were just a visual bug or an actual glitch, and we can safely confirm it is a bug or possibly even intentionally part of its design. Now this same interaction isn't something new. We've seen this present on Wave Splitter. We had a build back in Season the Haunted, and its output was crazy damage. But what's even crazier is that this season, we broke out that same build for Wave Splitter, and it seems as if it's been patched. That same volatile chaining explosions that we had with Wave Splitter before, we're not able to replicate that same effect as a solo player. Actually, we're required to see a team of at least 3 other people using Wave Splitters when combo with several buffs and debuffs to have that same volatile chaining effect. Needless to say, it's funky, and if you've actually seen our build video for that, some of you even commented that you weren't able to get or replicate those same volatile explosions. Now, we've done an in-depth volatile testing before, and when testing our Carl, each explosion actually deals 7,765 base damage, and to proc that explosion, you need to first apply volatile. Then you need to deal 7,000 damage. This damage number does change depending on the power level of the activity and the types of enemies that you're fighting. Now, based off of this information, our assumption in the case of Retrofit Escapade is that the damage dealt by the shots that apply the volatile are also contributing to the total damage required to trigger the void explosions. Testing Fighting Lion also confirms this theory. When Volatile Rounds is active, Fighting Lion both applies and triggers the explosions all at once, which makes sense for its archetype. Again, this is not confirmed, but in our opinion, the most logical explanation is that the game has an internal timer that registers the damage dealt to a target within an X amount of time, and if the damage exceeds a certain threshold, the damage that applied the debuff also contributes to the explosion. Now, we believe Bungie raised the damage threshold sometime between Season the Haunted and now, but now Retrofit Escapade exceeds that cap. With that out of the way, let's finally take a look at the damage numbers once more for Retrofit Escapade and Grand Overture, because yes, a lot of you are still sleeping on Grand Overture. Now, boss damage phase length. A crucial element in the discussion surrounding DPS is the length of the damage phase. How long do you have to sit back and deal damage to a boss? And in most of the tests we ran last week, we were using the Templar with no teleport that lasts for 10 seconds total. But damage versus, let's say, the Grasp of Avarice Ogre, which we did later that day, is 30 seconds. So depending on the weapon's sustained DPS, rankings can shift significantly. Now, Retrofit base damage. Its base damage is actually quite difficult to dissect, given all the different factors affecting this machine gun's damage output. You've got ambush buffs for that 10% for 2 seconds when you start firing. Target lock is dependent on the percentage of bullets fired based on the total in that magazine. This is why ammo generation perks are necessary to reach that 5 times target lock, because it only activates at 110% of the magazine. With a God Roll Retrofit Escapade, we have a starting magazine of 97, and the total number of bullets we can fire is 191, and that's with 4 times the charm, of course. This equates to 13 bullets at base damage and 95 at ascending damage from 1 times to 5 times target lock, and 83 bullets at 5 times target lock. We've also included boss spec in the base damage value. Using a lot, and I mean a lot of math, we could take the base damage per bullet, 13 shots, add it to target lock 5 times damage per bullet, which is 83 shots, and add that to the average damage per shot ranging from shots 14 to 108. And oh, let's not forget to include the damage bonus ambush provides for the first 2 seconds, which is 30 bullets total. This also bleeds into our target lock 1 times 4 damage average, which is kind of complicated. But based off damage numbers pulled from Ravenous Ogre and Grasp of Avarice, aka Greg 2.0, the theoretical damage per magazine is 508,209. Unfortunately, turns out the Ogre is a very unreliable test for Retrofit total damage. And to calculate our total theoretical damage, we'll need to figure out how much damage Volatile Rounds actually adds. The most consistent location to test volatile rounds we found was the final boss in Grasp of Avarice. He stands relatively still, and we also don't have any issues with Divinity on this target. Now for our testing, we lowered our total magazine size to 77. 4 times the charm actually brings the total shots up to 151, which is perfect for us because on a 900 round per minute machine gun, this lasts exactly 10 seconds, matching our Templar damage testing phase duration. This will adjust total damage numbers very slightly due to changes in the magazine size, but we're looking for the percentage damage increase of volatile rounds. And this setup is a perfect checksum for our theoretical numbers. Now when we take a look at our theoretical numbers, if we were to remove 40 5 times target lock bullets from the end of the magazine, we should expect approximately 389,289 damage with ambush removed as the base damage. There's a very small difference between the Ogre and the Fallen Captain damage per shot, but it is well within the margin of error. Lo and behold, when testing this base damage with Divinity, we got 450,874. And when we removed the Divinity 15% debuff, our total damage was 381,243, which is excellent, pretty much in line. Equipped with this information, we can establish how much of a buff volatile provides, and we can see if any odd behavior arises when we add more buffs. Here were our results. Retrofit plus Divinity, 450,874. Retrofit Divinity and Volatile, 753,700. Retrofit plus Divinity plus Well plus Volatile, 878,936. And Retrofit plus Divinity plus Well plus Font of Might plus Volatile, 1,111,429. Now what all these damage numbers really tell us is that Volatile is somewhat, well, volatile. We got ranges from 38% to 52% in just this snippet of testing. And I'm sure if we tested even longer, that range would only widen. No matter how much testing we do, Volatile just will not be contained to a single percentage. We still can't match the 967,990 damage that we dealt against the Templar. Now granted guys, part of the reason could be attributed to the Divinity user actually stealing volatile explosion damage, but Divinity is pretty necessary to get accurate damage numbers with 4 times the charm, unless you've got a big enough crit spot like you do with the Templar. But in most of our tests, this didn't really seem to change between our control tests without volatile to our tests with volatile. It did happen on occasion though, once even resulting in almost 200,000 damage taken. Now for our comparisons against Grand Overture in its base form, we're going to be taking our theoretical maximum magazine damage of 508,209 and the largest percentage increase of 52% from volatile for a total of 772,477 and our theoretical 10-second maximum damage of 395,809 ambush included, with the 50% volatile increase to 601,629 for a DPS of 60,163. Now Grand Overture base damage. Grand Overture actually has 2 firing modes with 2 very different DPS values. For our numbers, we won't be including time to prime Grand Overture's missile burst before a boss fight. Now in Grasp of Avarice Ogre, Grand Overture's single missile hits for 14,984 damage per shot. The barrage missiles deal slightly less at 14,026 when you add the impact and explosion damage. This means each 20-time missile barrage deals a theoretical maximum of 280,520 damage over 1.26 seconds for a whopping 222,635 DPS. Each magazine of 20 normal missiles deals 299,680, and this is damage over 12.7 seconds, giving us a DPS value of only 24,645. Now, optimal DPS over 10 seconds requires starting with barrage, then emptying the magazine until you have 10 to 11 shots, then releasing another barrage. We'll actually be sticking to 10 missiles since this was the best we could pull off consistently at Templar. Over 10 seconds, this would actually equate to 720,460 total damage for a DPS value of 72,046. Now, if we take this damage value, combine it with the 25% buff from Well of Radiance, the 15% debuff from Divinity, as well as the 20% buff from Mask of Bacchus, because again, it buffs not only your arc weapons, but also when you slow targets with stasis. This does give us a theoretical damage value of 1,242,793. Granted, that is theoretical damage, and the highest we could break during our damage testing was just under 1,050,000 damage. With that being said though, which one of these weapons wins? Now some of you are gonna say that I'm still defending Grand Overture in this, but hear me out. From a solo perspective, or at least from a single player damage perspective, Retrofit is better. It's easier to proc, the volatile explosions are nutty, although the damage can be inconsistent at times. You can proc Font of Might much easier with this setup considering you're rocking a void weapon and a void subclass, and you're also rocking Tether, so you can drop a nice hefty debuff, but keep in mind this weapon is very crit dependent, and on most damage phases, it will be highly suggested to bring a Divinity to the gunfight, which in a raid team removes one person out of the damage equation considering that person is rocking Divinity, and even in regular fire teams that removes one person, leaving 2 other people dealing damage with Retrofit, which is where Grand Overture comes in. The number for Grand Overture is comparable to that of Retrofit, even from a player-to-player perspective. Where things really start to pull ahead is the longer the damage window goes, and on top of that, Retrofit is a legendary and can be combined with Witherhoard. But the beautiful thing about Grand Overture is that it does not require crits, guys. Similar to that of like Xenophage, Grand Overture just requires you to make contact with the enemy. You don't have to land crits. And this is a beautiful thing because this means the entire fire team, whether it's a 3-man fire team or a raid squad, can all rock Grand Overtures. You do not need a divinity. So yes, technically I do owe you a god roll, because from a single player to a single player perspective, Retrofit Escapade is the superior weapon with the combination of target lock, especially enhanced target lock, and Gyrfalcon, and I do suggest getting this god roll of Retrofit. But in team environments, in burst DPS, in my opinion, Grand Overture is just as good, as it doesn't require you to land crits and it allows for the entire fire team to deal damage. Now keep in mind, some bosses you can't even deal volatile damage to. For instance, Oryx. Retrofit and Gyrfalcon doesn't exactly work when it comes to damage phases against Oryx. Don't ask me why. At the same time, it's not like Grand Overture can be utilized against certain bosses, considering the range that they're at, and the missile tracking can be kind of funky. During our damage phases at the Templar, I have to have people actually clear ads just to make sure the missiles don't track to those ads and all track to the boss. So there's pros and cons here, guys, is what I'm trying to say. Yes, I owe you a god roll. I will be deleting it on Tuesday before Grandmaster Nightfalls. With that being said though, GMs this season, if it's an arc burn, I'm rocking Grand Overture, and probably a combination of Grand Overture and Mask of Bacchus, since those 2 things combine so well. And if it's a void burn, 100% I'm going to be rocking Retrofit Escapade and Gyrfalcons, because the synergy there is just too damn good. It clears ads out really nicely and it does fantastic damage, and both of these are going to get the job done very easily, especially with their associated burns. Now, which one of these is likely to get nerfed? This is where we want to talk about the future of damage. Bungie has already stated very clearly that they do not want a machine gun meta. They don't want us to sit there and just lay on the machine gun. And considering our wave splitter build got nerfed or somehow patched in some way, and it's not doing its volatile explosions like it once did, guys, I think Retrofit is probably going to be looked at. I'm not advocating for it to get nerfed. I'm just saying it is likely. Either that or Gyrfalcons is actually going to get toned down. Neither of these do I want. I'm just letting you know the reality of things. On top of that, linear fusion rifles, which I know have been top dog, considering you can do bait and switch Cataclysmic with Witherhoard and Star Class and do a hell of a lot of damage, including total damage. We know linears are going to be getting a nerf in Lightfall though. But you know what I think is definitely not going to get a nerf? Grand Overture. I think this exotic is in a very good spot, guys. And I know I'm sounding like I'm simping for Grand Overture, and hell guys, maybe I am. Just a little. Maybe I just want you to try Grand Overture out because it got a hell of a buff this past season and it's worth your time. The other beautiful thing about Grand Overture is not locked to a single class. Sure, Bacchus buffs the damage here, but you can go and get on time with Actium War Rig, and Grand Overture pairs perfectly over there. I don't see anything bad happening to Grand Overture at any point in the future. And where its damage sits, the fact that it does not require to land crits, I think for team scenarios and team damage values, Grand Overture can definitely match that of Retrofit, but I also will agree that in a one-to-one comparison, theoretical and real damage values, for now, Retrofit does come out on top. So again, guys, we will be live on Twitch for Grandmaster Nightfalls this Tuesday. Feel free to come by. Pick the god roll of your choice. We'll be doing a poll. You guys can choose it. We'll be going through my vault. For the love of God, show some mercy though, all right? And the only other thing I would ask you to do this season is to please try out Grand Overture. You'll be amazed how well it's actually doing. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.